Okay. All right. So first thing we're going to do today, everybody got their quiz back, right? Everybody? Okay. So, number one. This was a tricky one. Which ones are correct? All of them, right? I actually just like cut and paste from the PowerPoint slides into the document. Right? So we might see this lag time when the species are introduced, when they actually become a problem, because that's just how popular they are sometimes. Might not recognize a growing population. There might be some kind of environmental change. And then small populations might get wiped out, but once they get big enough, okay. All right. So I think everybody got this one right. A student should consult the syllabus when they have a question about kind of anything, any of those things. This one, some people are confused. So legal definition as the two components are not native talking about, and it can cause. So we talked about the three different types: harm, ecological. Number 4. What did we? So it was abiotic or environmental, right? That's option A. And option E is some examples: fire, wildfire, or density, right? It doesn't matter how individuals are factored in space. So a lot of people got this mixed up and said B and C, which are dependent. And then this number 5 talked about 2 kind of lag time class. We talked about lag time of use and to when they become a problem. That's the answer that I'm looking for. But a lot of people talk about lag and of the economic. And so if you said kind of the spent, kind of reported being spent, then I still gave you. And this was a big. All right. Good enough. The economic cost of invasive species is rising as fast as the number of new invasive species. So that was the answer. The carrying capacity of a species is the number of individuals in a population that can be supported by the resources, the environment. We symbolize that by this letter K. Just that, and then it can vary with different environments in a species. And number 8 was a species dependent population. Cottonwoods and Chandler. So good job overall. I think the class got better. So that was successful. And if you have any issues or questions about why you got the score that you got, I'm happy to. Okay, and then I think did everybody get their guided reading questions in about the humpback show thing? Okay, back after class. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about what an invasive habitat might look like that favor cases. So on Tuesday, we talked about what kind of characteristics an invasive species would have that would make them good invaders. Now we're going to talk about what a habitat characteristics. Okay. Oh, get into all that though. So this is the data that we collected. I see. So we had 170 trials. vast majority, of course, did not become established. And we found a few of our little dice rolls that ended up with established, and two in. Does this match what we would expect? What the heck is the tinge? Anybody remember? Yeah, so all those species that are brought to a new location, 90% of them are just gonna like die off. And then, so 10% are gonna become established, and then of those 10% established, only 10 those invasive. So, what do you guys think? Does this match that expert? Yeah, pretty good. I mean, there's some randomness in it, right? There's always randomness in the universe, especially when we're talking about biology, ecology. These ecosystems are messy. So this is close. We would expect maybe that this would be 10% and this would be 90%, but that's pretty dang close. And then of course our 1 point. And so this guy, so remember what the number one book biology. So it's an exception to that. So even the guy that made up this tensor rule was like said in the paper, tensor rules should be taken seriously, but not too seriously. Right? So there is some variation. Some gonna be better invaders, big habitats were prone to invasion. So this is a general kind of as we're making. Okay. So just to make my life easier, I in the next few slides that you guys read. How was that paper? Yeah? I got a couple thumbs up, yeah. I got a kind of sort of, I guess. What part made you mad? Just see this. That one. There's a very like understand. I do. Kind of not. I understand. Yeah, well, yeah, and so there is like that was a. I will tell you, writing this statute, or and the because of people that are so invested in agro, and don't always see eye to eye on what is the best way to manage Colorado. And my grandfather was worked for the BLM and kind of like the liaison with the state. And he's like, on a good day, I piss everybody off. And there's like everybody's gonna be mad at me because they're not showing care. And that was kind of one thing that was inevitable about this is that somebody's gonna get kicked off because there's so many different points of view. Okay, anything else that anybody else wanted to talk about before I go through the questions? I think yeah, that's very good. It's 10. All right. So to make this easier, so I don't have to write rainbow trout every time, I just did rainbow trout. Okay, so remember the native guys and the crabs are And in fact, the humpback chub is one of the first species to get that disease. That was next. All right, so where do we find these guys? Oh, here we go. So they're in the Colorado River, right? Mostly rainbow trout are between 110 and least very so that's in the tail. And then the humpback chub are mostly near where the Colorado River, Colorado. So they kind of are facially are a little bit distinct. Right, so the most of the time the rainbow trouts are upstream a little bit of where we see a lot of the chub. But when there's lots of rainbow trout, even a few that migrate downstream where the humpback chub are can cause problems. Okay, and so here's just the map that I pulled out. So mostly the chub are kind of from the dam here on the border, kind of a little bit downstream of the dam, or sorry, downstream of Ferry, and then on the Colorado. So, how did okay, how have environmental changes made it hard to disentangle how rainbow trout affecting natives? Yeah. Um, yeah. So we saw this line that when it opened the dam, changed the water acidity, um, and we had this other biotic competition. And then what about the other one? We saw the catch up happening then. That's when we started to see the and that also coincided with decrease. So we had environment change. Okay, so when the dam was completed and when cattle was made, instead of saying there's like huge variability in water temperature going to things. Now it's really consistent and it's almost always the same temperature. So I know a couple people like to fish this portion of the river, right? It's cold. It's cold. And also the amount of sediment in that that water is used. Oh crap. Yeah. Oh. And we got also this. But as the trout removals were happening, that's when we saw this uptick in climate change. That's when we started to see trout and the waters that were produced, water level foul started to go down to being water that bottom like foul back to the and the humpback chub need water for their breeding season. So we saw changes in humpback chub corresponded with environmental change and the population. So now we have these confounding factors. We don't really know what's causing the changes So that makes it hard to say, oh, this is the causal thing. All right, so does humpback chub fit the definition? What is the definition? It's not native, causes damage. You humpback chub. Is it native? Humpback chub. No, sorry, I'm saying the wrong damn thing. Rainbow trout. Are rainbow trout native to Colorado River? No. Do they cause ecological, economic, or harm to human health? Yes. Because how do they cause ecological? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So they're preying on native fish or things that we population effect. And they also compete for food, right? Free that stuff. So yeah, rainbow trout does fit our definition of invasive. But then why do they call it a desirable non-native? Yeah. So, bring a lot of money. Yes. And the amount of what is it? Sorry, I can't hear you there. So, right, so fire all and so rainbow trout, they're like, yeah. So yeah, so really all the at stake. So depending on how you feel about that. Okay. So we talked about some ways that you manage humpback trout. No, rainbow trout in or but it's like there was a student in this class trout actually spent out. What do they do? Yeah. No. I give up. Gross. That's how it and that's why that. So and those removals happen where at the Colorado River where the humpback chub kind of go in and out of and they breed their hatchery. So so that's where the removals happen. So the along I think it's like 11 miles. Okay. So of course, like I think we already talked about this, that there are some people that read about filing defining they're worried about and that area and I'm eating because it's really hard to and there's a distance. And it's possible. So knowing if it's economic worth do that, really deciding how we're at it. Which brings us to the bioeconomical model. Is it cost effective to go out and think back up right now? It's not. Why? Yeah. Yeah, so there we're actually have right. So the population that's in the 90s used to be like less than 10. It was in the single digits, like this species. And now there's like 1,000. And then there's another population farther. So we actually see this nice comeback of these comeback chubs. And so but there's a nice little graph that kind of shows where it becomes cost effective. Doesn't if we have this many humpback chub and this many rainbow trout and kind of determine cost. So we don't have to that way. Let's also say that looking at modeling how and how water precision, water source, towel. Oh, no, sorry. In Nevada, where we decide to store the is really going to make a big difference. Because the more water that we have in like Powell, the better it's fixed. And that. But as we already talked about, it's hard to say one way or another. The environment things. That's why it's also important to have to also know. Right. That is nice. All right. So some other things that humpback trout have to deal with are brown trout. These guys are new on scene in Colorado. It was like fairly new. Don't have data right now how brown trout. But we do brown trout eat. So or rainbow trout eat that kind of yeah. But brown trout's the chubs at a larger. So it's just rainbows, as long as you could get to a COVID the now by the grounds. And then there's this question of how much food do they really know? Like it's food. If there were more bugs for fish to eat, there would be more. And so I'll talk later about we get to the management next week. Talk about bugs. Just gonna. And so. Okay. So now let's talk about characteristics of invasive habitat. So let's do this thing, the same thing that we did on Tuesday. So get with the thing next to you and think about the habitat now. And what would characteristics of that habitat make it? So I'll give you guys a few minutes to talk about that. So find a buddy, groups of two, chat about that. Okay, so what did you guys? Yes. Okay. I feel for that. That's good. Okay. Okay, so higher. Expect higher. Than you. Okay. Yeah. Minus a. Yeah. All right. Human activity. All right. Anything else? You got? Did you have your hand up? No, it was, no. Okay.
I guess.
Okay, great. After faster. Okay. Anything else? Right. See. What I said. Okay, so you might have vacant niches. So there might be some areas where there's just not a lot of resources. Wait, somebody. So this example, islands, Guam, as territory, doesn't have any native snakes. And so when the brown tree snake was introduced, they were like, yeah, because I don't have it. And similarly, that black or loss of and how so it'll be easier to evade, right? And this is kind of the same concept as the last one. There's resources just waiting to exploit it. And if there's not a lot of biodiversity, maybe there's low biodiversity, but there's a lot of individuals. That might be not available, but there's low population. So if there's high biodiversity, that means that there's high. So if it's they're a little bit more resistant being negative. So then stable communities are less likely to be native. Every species has a different niche, right? That's why we see speciation occurring. There's like we see these different individuals taking advantage of this. But as the number of species increases, that niche space available also and makes them hard to. So how test? So get with your partner again and think of a way that we can define a study to test this lack of foster diversity. How could we even this? So get loud. So, Okay. Right. After a people price up. So maybe you just go to an observational study where you go out and you throw out some photographs, count up the species, and you say, okay, there's many species total, this many are native and are invasive, like have a invasive and biodiversity, right? So that's a really great way to do that. But correlation, right, is not causation. So can we show that biodiversity is causing a lack of Asian? Just like doing an experiment. Did anybody come up with a manipulative experiment? Is there any other lines of conduct? Okay. So this experiment was done in Minnesota, natural group, and you can see all these plots. And different number of species were planted. So they range from and so you can see sort of like here's a pretty diverse plot. Here's a really not diverse. So by controlling how many species are planted, and then let nature do its thing, give us years, maybe some invasive in. And they were able to show the actual. So the plots had 1, 2, 4, etc. Species of they were going from low biodiversity to high, and that's what we see on our x-axis here. And then over time, they actually saw 13 non-natives that naturally their plot. And when they looked at the number of invaders, so remember this is in the logarithm scale, so it's like really dramatic difference. When there was high diversity, there was relative low invasive. But when there was a lot of invasive. And they actually got the maximum size of the invaders smaller in the biodiversity loss. Species that are actually able to get in are doing so hot. That was really cool. Yes. And there's lots of other questions. This case. So as the native increased, the amount of invader cover decreased, the number decreased, and the invader max size decreased, but the median size, so like the smack in the middle, didn't matter. So we can then there's fewer invaders and poorer performance of invaders increase. So we could say the gap of biodiversity or natural high biodiversity are less likely. All right, we said this one too. So here we go. Natural disasters and disturbances are going to make it easier to environment. So what? Well, yes, the disturbance talking ecologically is this kind of like shift environmental that ecosystem cover from. But it causes this mass change. What can you guys think of this? Yeah, wildfire. Awesome. That is definitely one that is happening more frequently and higher. Yeah. Drought. And seeing further droughts and that definitely anything else. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's housing. Service. Part of that. Yes. Yeah. Forestation. Activity. Service. So and yeah, that is okay. So our friend cheatgrass, number 2 worst invasive species in the western U.S. Loves fire. It has this weird life cycle in the winter. That's when the seeds germinate, and like the snow will melt off the double grass fall, and that's in cheatgrass. It grows up during the spring when there's lots of water available, and by July, most of the time, it's done. It's life cycle. It's set new seed, germinate in the winter, and it's cool, and it just dies. And so you get these stands of this dead grass that's highly flammable. And actually the seeds need fire in order to germinate. So it is altering the ecosystem, altering the fire regime to benefit itself. So yeah, so it increases, and that's particularly bad for sagebrush, because I think we talked about the sagebrush habitat. There's usually brush here, and then there's all this like bare ground and there cheatgrass comes and fills in that and now that fire that might burn this sagebrush is now going to spread, get this thing. So actually see an increase of the intensity and severity. Okay, here's another one. Yellow star, it really likes living by the side of the road. What is great about living by the side of the road?
Stick stuff.
Say that again?
Stick to.
Yeah, so you might have better dispersal. Okay, that's a good one. What about water availability versus on here versus here? Well, actually, when rain hits this road, does it soak into the ground? No, it runs up, right? And so along the sides of the road, we actually see an increase in water available compared to, a little bit. also warmer. It's also more, and so native plants might have a time living at higher, whereas this guy doesn't. So again, I'm making it. So why would a disturbance favor? So think about that for a hot second, maybe talk about it with your neighbor. Why would um, so, yeah, so yeah. Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'm gonna pick on how many by okay. So observation. Excellent. Okay, so you're yeah. So you might see it change. Itch again. So anybody else want to add anything? So I kind of a oh, I mean, sorry, those are your asked. Okay. Yeah, so basically thing you have this prevent that the competition not bring the biotic. Anybody else? So talk about it. Okay. Or junkie. It used to be there, now it's there. Disturbances might spread from. So particularly if you're talking about plants or fungi, you might see it spread of seeds or vegetative or asexual reaction. Remember talking about that one wet plant they threw in a fragment spread. So that's another thing that might happen. And there are big campaigns to help spread or reduce the spread and then invasive plants. And I'll speak. Sorry, I have a so here's just an example. Always February and any. Kind of help care of problem and hey, you said higher nutrients because of disturbance, but yeah, totally. I see error, carbon, phosphorus, water. Big problem, especially in estuaries, is algal bloom. So, well, my drain is and it picks up phosphorus and it farmer picks it up, and it takes it out into the river, out into the bay, and that disturbance benefits the higher phosphorus benefits algae that can grow so much, and then they die off or decompose. That decomposition process sucks up all the oxygen, and it causes problems for native fish and insects and stuff. Okay, and so often invasive species have a fuel lifestyle. Short maturity range. They're able to make babies when they're fairly young. They have high reproduction, and then like that kind of live fast, die young lifestyle is kind of a good characteristic of an that makes them easy to get into the invaded for those. You guys, there's no, it's you guys called lambs here, I think. I should have taken a picture, but there's by my house there was a shred. It's just this only backslash not the baby. Sure. But instead I have see small make lots of baby. And then I think you talked about alternate acid organic. I see it reduces cameras comes in, reduces the number of sunshine, and that changes the way that cottonwood and those there's an example of that. And cameras like to serve areas where built dams, pumping groundwater and other city water data cameras. So here's our bus school cameras. Almost every that's it, guys. And here's a classic. That's so this study that was done here at NAU looked at how disturbance might change the way that soil are affected. The native grass and grass. And the native grass in question is this pearl. These guys are all over the place. And then again, our cheatgrass, our Roma stick. They have 3 treatments. They planted soil from an area that had a striped fern. So it was a disturbed area, collected soil from an undisturbed area just outside that. And then they collected some extra soil and just nuked it to kill everything in there. So getting rid of all those microbes. So what they found is that when they were looking at the number of flowers on the swirltail on the native plant in undisturbed soil, they had tons of flowers. But then in disturbed and in their sterile, production. What do you think, cheatgrass? Is it going to show the same pattern? What do you think? Yeah, I saw a lot of nodes. And you guys are right. So in the undisturbed soil, they did just as well as in the soil. About how much they don't care. Disturbed or not, they're going to make babies. And then this, we're showing that native grass. So here, so here's their untreated symbol. It's this little diamond thing, and then an area where they took the debris instead of doing a prescribed burn, they just like ground it up. So that's what this triangle is here, here, and then their burn is here. And then their sterile control, they didn't actually have. So we're looking at the x-axis is how many of those mycorrhizal fungi are present inside of the roots. And so we're going from 0 to 80%. So the sterile control, they just didn't have any, right? Good job with that effective control. But when they kind of had their more natural, undisturbed things, they found that native grasses actually bigger. They had higher shoot biomass. The more mycorrhiza they had, the bigger the plants got. But when we compare that to what the invasives had, we see that the more mycorrhizas there were, that smaller the. And that was especially true in these more natural. We saw this total divergence pattern in grass benefiting more under natural, and the invasive grass being harmed. And then, of course, our lovely friend. Climate change really altered, but also in how invasive is. Here's the example. That's our friend Ryan. Tropical fish, that big asteroid, and venomous, house Tuesday, and it's actually the benefit, right? Because the waters are getting warm, and it's able to expand its range, but it's limited by water. As the water gets the amount of space of live. So what are some other ways that you guys come up with is how we find that how basic So similar to here, because we're seeing to increase water, the range tends to have. Yeah. There's like, thing like, uh, and minor yeah, so we see this migration of that and how higher as you eat, it gets tends to get wetter and wetter and drier. Back they're finding up higher time until you put out fingers. And so that leaves behind that might allow and seeing a shift in the native higher that might already be occupied by good. Okay, anything else you guys wanna?
This might be quiz question on Tuesday.
Yeah. Other. Or. Yeah, so the warmer temperatures might be bigger critters, they're able to fit bigger faster. And another thing about a lot of reptiles that their sex ratios are 10 by in their age. And so see a lot more males under which has significant of ramification. Sorry, guys. Genetics. We're talking about population dynamics over the long term, be it counting the number of females. How the math works out. Yeah. So, they're training them to do what?
Eat lionfish.
Oh, to eat lionfish. Yeah.
Diet.
Right. We get to the damage section. We'll have some. They're passing. So yeah, so those are all good ways. Okay. So 10 minutes early, I think fine with that. Any questions or anything before I let you go? Okay, do you so this is the end of our second week of our 5-week course that we are like halfway through. If you guys haven't started working on your projects now, I highly suggest and that you use and final project presentation. If I were doing this, I would take this and have it download the document. I would type right in and Okay, as you're doing your own, use this to make sure that bring it over, whatever. Thing that you're gonna- And if anybody is confused about how to how to get us out in PowerPoint, whatever, contact me, I have our sign. You know, if you're getting hung up on that, but also remember that these next 3 weeks are gonna go fast. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Be ready for just 2 weeks. And if that's anybody's water bottle, you grab, or if anybody wants to claim there was a water bottle that I found over here, I set it there by the door. If anybody wants to claim it, go ahead.